the burning of the Robert E. Lee statue has been something very memetic. And for people who don't know what we're talking about, there was a statue in Charlottesville of Robert E. Lee. There was the Charlottesville protest that obviously ended in the car attack there after all the infighting between communists and the right-wingers there. And mostly the alt-right, I believe.
Yeah,
I don't want to give them the full credit of being the most people there, but I'm not sure. I just don't remember the time period. I think it.
I think it was. It was the Unite the Right rally, which I think was
an alt-right meetup.
An alt-right meetup. Yeah. I think that's fair.
The response from all of that has been, well, what if we destroy the statue? Was the establishment response there, and what they finally decided to do is this. If we get it on screen, which is melt the thing down into slag, and they decided to cut it up into bits, and as you can see here, they cut off the face of the statue of Robert E. Lee and have made it kind of cool, I'll be honest, looking at that.
Totemic.
Yeah.
That's what this is. The burning head of Robert E. Lee, looking sad and maudlin at the passing of civilization.
And they list here some details which make this even more memetic.
Just as a quick thing, this looks like the head of an idol from like Indiana Jones or something. You know, the sad head of a dead god finally being melted down.
Being destroyed by the Spanish or something.
One of those stone faces in Labyrinth telling you to turn back before it's too late.
Yeah, you know? Exactly. Yeah, this to me, this is genuinely a kind of mythological inflection point.
But if this had just been some statue that's being destroyed because, I don't know, we're changing it for a park or something, it wouldn't. And I think in this case, it's got a real feeling of, I don't know, mysticism almost, as you guys talk about it.
But also a kind of Rubicon being crossed, right?
Yeah, because as they say here, it was destroyed in secret. It was secretly melted down and will become a new piece of public art here. And that perked a lot of ears. It was like,
the cursed art made from the destroyed statue of Robert E. Lee.
But that secret aspect, I was like, okay, I thought that something was being done with it. I heard the last thing I heard was they were taking it down and moving it to a museum or something like that. Which, okay.
Which is what they did.
Yeah.
Sorry, was it done in secret by the authorities, by the state, or just by protesters?
Well, the Washington Post...
Who is doing this in secret?
Went there with the people doing this in secret. They found out and helped them do it and film it to make it, I don't know, look cool or something. So they've got the full details. And I'll just leave the face on screen, I suppose. In fact, I might go back and just look at that.
Yeah, no, keep that up.
That's amazing. And I'll read it to you. So on Saturday, the museum went ahead with its plan in secret in a small southern foundry in a town and states. The Washington Post agreed not to name because the participants fear of violence. Quote, well, they can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again, said Andrea Douglas, the museum's executive director.
Okay,
that
so
was
the museum themselves did this. Okay.
It's the Black History Museum in Charlottesville. They were given the statue and decided in secret to destroy it. And that's something that really makes this some kind of double mythological event.
Yeah.
We have museum curators destroying their exhibits.
Taking on the opinion of ISIS.
Yeah, I mean, at least
the
ISIS...
heretical artifacts of the past.
Yeah, at least ISIS were turning up and destroying a museum that they weren't a part of.
I guess.
This is the guys destroying their own stuff because they've declared it cursed.
Well, that's something I want to say about iconoclasm. So that's what this is.
Yeah.
I've said it before somewhere, probably in an epoch, that I think after violent crimes, you know, rape and murder and assault and things, one of the worst things humans can do is iconoclasm. It's destroying icons or art or images, trying to destroy history and heritage in all sorts of ways. And it really is a direct line to sort of Maoism or the early Bolsheviks.
Yeah. It is entirely what they did. It's not even a parallel. It is
right. Oh, and it's completely deliberate.
I mean, we now have
it's not just a result of someone's odd thinking. No, that's hard baked into
the sort of communist revolution that we're seeing.
Sort of leftism, socialism, communism.
Because they want to reformat the past so they have always been good at year zero. So nothing bad, nothing anti-communist or whatever it is has ever really happened. And that's just evil.
And you may remember, we now have a law in the UK. You get up to 10 years in prison if you destroy a statue. And this was because they tried to destroy the Churchill one.
Yeah.
And the Conservatives went a bit mental. Because
God, they could go mental about something.
Yeah.
Honestly, thank God there was at least one thing. In the cold, shriveled heart of the Conservative Party, they're attacking Winston Churchill. And it's a boom, boom, boom. Come on. Okay, we can,
Wait 50 years, they won't care.
Yeah, of course, but at least there was something,
Yeah.
a spark of life and humanity in them.
But this isn't about them. This is about this statue. And there was a plan, or at least a consideration, that they were going to melt down the statue and turn it into a cannon of the era. So then they use the bronze to make something, and that could be a more appropriate way of using it. Not very inspiring. But the Ghislaine Schmidt, who stood next to the museum curator, said no cannons as she watched it melt.
Yeah, cannon would have been cool.
Miss Schmidt there, she's also a University of Virginia religious studies professor. There's always a professor involved. Swords into Plowshares, a project led by two women, will turn bronze ingots made from the molten Lee statue into a public artwork to be displayed in Charlottesville. All of this could have happened as early as January 2022, but once a lawsuit was fired to block the meltdown, the museum waited until a judge agreed to dismiss the case. And there was a 30-day window for the plaintiffs, the people trying to save the statue, to issue an appeal to go to an appeal judge. And in that period, that's when they've decided in secret to destroy it in complete contempt of court.
In case it wins appeal.
Yeah.
Right.
And this isn't wise, actually. There's a reason you can't visit Hitler's grave, right? As in,
Well, you can.
okay, I thought the Soviets scattered the ashes.
Yeah, no one knows. There is no grave.
There's there's not a physical grave because we couldn't find his remains. But if you go to the bunker, the Führer bunker, there is a sign there and whatnot.
Sure. But like the point being, okay, if there are devotees of Robert E. Lee knocking around, okay, we're going to melt it down and turn it to public artwork. Okay, well then they'll just go to that and drape that with Confederate flags.
Or we could just melt it down and return it into the statue. Doesn't make much sense.
Well, yeah, that too. But like, you're not actually destroying the thing's power that you perceive it to have.
But they justify it by arguing that they're doing this in secret because of the threat of violence. But to be honest, that just makes them look more and more guilty of destroying something, which they knew they couldn't.
This sort of thing is at odds with civilization.
Yeah.
It really is. It's at odds with, and I mean this in absolutely not the leftist sense, but at odds with progress, actual human progress. It's what it is. It's trying to ride roughshod over history, and it never really works. Like if you look at Stalin trying to erase people, erase their memories, not only are they now dead, they actually never existed.
Look at the Christians trying to erase the pagan gods.
Yeah, it's nearly always an exercise in futility for a start, and it's sort of, again, it's not in the same as an actual violent crime like a murder or rape, but it's sort of the most despicable thing you can do in my book.
I mean, you are right to say it's literally against civilization, because if civilization is the continuum and accruing of cultural layers and inheritance from the past, then, I mean, that's what the Robert E. Lee statue actually really does represent in this particular case. Whether you agree with the two sides of the Civil War or not, and I'm not an American, so I really don't care. I've got zero investment in the Confederacy or the Union. I'm not an American. I don't care, right? It's not, I wouldn't care if history had gone the other way. What difference would it make to me, right? But the point is, this is what happened in America, and the statue becomes totemic and symbolic about that issue and what that meant to the development of the American Republic. And so it's something that you carry forward from the past into the future by means of the present. And that's literally what a civilization is, like metaphysically. That's what the thing is. And so, attacking that thing, I think calling it anti-civilization is the best way of framing it.
Something like this doesn't help mend the wounds of the American Civil War or anything like that. Yeah, it opens the wounds.
Well, is American society better off in a discussion about the Confederacy back when Dukes of Hazzard was on the TV or now? Definitely.
That's a great question.
And
sorry, real quick, you showed me a couple of weeks ago a picture in Russia where they had 3 giant flagpoles. They had the old Tsarist imperial eagle flag, the communist
Soviet Union,
and the modern Russian flag. That is quite a healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
You're not pretending the past didn't happen.
Hi folks, we've rolled out a new feature on the website, which is the ability to pay for an individual piece of content. So usually it's £5 a month every month to subscribe to all of the content on the website. But I appreciate there are going to be people who simply don't want to do that. They would be interested instead in purchasing a single piece of content for a lower amount and they've got a particular niche that they're interested in watching. And so they don't want every single piece of content. They just want this one thing. So we've introduced this function where you can just simply purchase the one thing for £1.89, which I think is about $2.30 at the current exchange rates. And then that's just yours forever. So there's no sort of commitment there. There's no rolling subscription. It's just that one thing. So that's an option now that's on the website. It's completely live. It's completely available. And please go and enjoy it. And we'll see you all very soon.
This is just trying to pretend it never happened. Just get rid of it. Just annihilate it. Destroy it. Never speak of it again.
And we do some similar things.
It's not going to work
in Britain as well. When you remember the sort of like the Free Tommy protests and stuff like that, right? The free speech ones. Do you remember the plurality of flags there?
Yeah.
It was really interesting. Like you get the Angevin, 3 lions on the red. And then you'd have, England flags, Scotland flags, Welsh flags, British flags, and just various flags that Britain and England have, and the Celtic nations.
Complete tapestry of civilization.
I like the Wessex,
the new party one.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't just the uniform. This is the new party. It was throughout the history, and people have obviously chosen that thing. So I like this bit of the history, and it was all incorporated together, and it was all actually quite wholesome.
But getting to this article, because the Washington Post end this off, and I think you'll like this, the creepy nature of the language they use here. They say, but this might be the first Confederate monument to be melted, and each person witnessing the scene on Saturday had a different view of what it meant. Some said the statue was being destroyed. Others called it restoration. Depending on whom you asked, the bronze was being reclaimed, disrupted, or redeemed to a higher purpose. It was a grim act of justice and a celebration all in one. There were toddlers eating pizza, parents in swords and plowshares shirts sitting on lawn chairs, and old friends sipping from paper cups filled with champagne and bourbon.
Okay, so let's have a quick break here and say, how much does Robert E. Lee justify this? Was he actually Adolf Hitler? Because, I mean, if this was a statue of Hitler, I can understand. How bad was Robert E. Lee?
Well, he was just a senior general in the Confederate Army. That's what he was.
Was he a Nazi?
No.
Like, was he no blacks will be freed under my watch?
No, so his thing was he was senior in the American Army. And when the Civil War started, he had a crisis of confidence and didn't know which side to back. And in the end, he resigned his commission in the US Army and only then went over. Because he was a Virginiaman.
Yeah.
Now, there's this thing. Are you more loyal to Great Britain, the UK, or England?
England.
Right, yeah, me too. He was more loyal to Virginia than he was to the United States. Yeah. That was his reasoning. He said, I can't raise arms against my own people, my home, my state. That was his reasoning. It wasn't really to do with, I love slavery.
Because there is a...
Well, no, as I understand it, Robert E. Lee was pro-abolition of slavery.
I believe so. I'm not entirely sure, actually.
There is a quote from him that's quite famous, but I don't necessarily... someone better in history will have to tell me the details of him being pro or anti-slavery. There's a quote from him which is very similar to Lincoln, which is that if he owned all the slaves in the South, he would free them to avoid this dreadful war. And that seems to have been a universal position of all Americans.
I'm reasonably sure he had slaves of his own that he freed.
I believe that's true.
I'm sure that he was on the abolitionist side of the argument. It's just, you're declaring war on my country.
So, I mean, this is the reality versus what they say here, for example. This metal has a lot of bad juju stuck in it. It's cursed, said the foundry owner. And this is in complete contrast to what I think this guy correctly points out and what you're getting at. This is what a true American is, because there's so much in this image here for people listening. It's Confederates and Union soldiers years later shaking hands over a wall there.
You can see they're very old.
Yeah, they're very old men.
This photos have obviously been colorized.
But I remember seeing a manual for American soldiers during World War II who were being sent to Europe. And in there was some details about how to live in Europe and what to deal with the Brits and blah, blah, blah. And then there was one line that was particularly fascinating where they mentioned that you may have had grandparents who fought on either side of the Civil War, but we're all in this together now. It's like even as late as World War II, they're having this coming together moment. And that reality is far more healthy than whatever the hell has just happened in the United States. But I suppose with that, we'll move to the response, which is, well, it became quite memetic. As people noticed, my God, look at that thing. So someone wrote a book, The Decline of the American Empire, with its new cover, which it's fitting for sure.
I mean, it literally does look like some Easter Island statue or something, doesn't it?
Yeah, penguin classic.
Glowing with godlike energy, pronouncing a curse that it'll come back and get vengeance.
One day.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like an Odin or Woden.
Yeah,
type
possibly.
thing.
There's an idea here for if you need a new album cover, you can do that too. Local rat endorses. Find it in Woolworths everywhere. It goes on. Some people started saying it's literally me with this meme, and it kept going. I do love this. He loved Virginia, freed his slaves, and was a war hero. He was a brave Southern gentleman, and this house Robert E. Lee is a hero. End of story.
I think that's probably all true, though.
Probably.
I genuinely think that is all true statements.
I mean, the lies told about the Confederacy is just weird. Like the demonization to comic book levels of anything in history usually is ridiculous. That's been my experience. Some people started putting it as their profile picture. This chap did.
It's haunting, isn't it? Genuinely haunting thing.
Yeah. It also went on. Some people figure out you can put it into AI.
Of course you can.
And the AI has been having good fun with that. There's a whole bunch of examples here of people just, well, giving him drip, I suppose is the modern way of talking about it. There we are. There's a bit more. I did notice that a lot of Americans did obviously compare this to ISIS and whatnot.
Yeah.
What I doubly love about that is that something that's 100-something years old is basically ancient history for Americans, which again is not a criticism. That's so cute. I love it. where it's just like it as they compare it here to ISIS blowing up some ancient Sumerian bollocks in Iraq and Syria.
Man, I went over to Maryland, and I was at a small town whose name I can't remember now before I went on Tim's show, and I just wanted to have a walk around just to see what it was like. So I'm walking around this town, and I come to this cemetery, and it's really well kept. And I'm walking around it, and there's this old couple, and I start talking to them, and they proudly tell me that the cemetery was it was built in 1906, and so it's a very old cemetery, and they're very proud of that. I was like, oh, that's very good for you. Very old, but they, I didn't.
But it's not in a way where you're looking at down your nose.
No, I wasn't.
No. It's just like, oh god, that's great.
No, but I was actually like, okay, that's nice because they're establishing themselves historically as a sort of people rooted to the place, rather than being just like an American who moves cities every 5 years because there's a better job there, right? So this to them was like a homeland. Whereas in Miami, I didn't meet anyone who viewed Miami as a homeland. You know what I mean? So you could see there was a textural difference there, but it was nice. It's 1906. That's nice.
It's funny when I've said this. Yeah.
My house actually new, but you know what I mean.
Like in the church just down the road from where I sort of grew up, mainly there's some gravestones there from the 11th century.
Yeah,
but if you go to like maybe Ankara or Basra, they'd be like, "Oh, how cute!"
Yeah, exactly.
The 11th century AD. Oh,
walking past the ziggurats of Ur in Iraq, it's just like, yeah, I guess okay.
But it's not an unimportant point to mention this because it actually doubles the crime here, in my view, because you are destroying something that is quite rare in the United States, which is anything older than 10 years. And this is why, in my experience, they love old things. I mean, you can see here a Lenin statue that's been sent to Seattle, and a lot of people obviously being like, "Well, burn this then." The hypocrisy point's obviously true. No one cares about Lenin, no matter how many people he kills. But it's also just, you've
definitely killed more people than Robert E. Lee as well.
But the burning of the statue as well is a crime in and of itself because America doesn't have much old stuff. Like, you should actually take care of it, and it's ridiculous to do it. And for people who do appreciate statues and such, I mean, you can take an idea out of the playbook of BLM here, which is just replace the statue that's been destroyed with one of your own. Just make a newer, fancier one and put it in the same place. Because this is what BLM did in the past.
One quick thing I will say, though, about iconoclasm, broadly speaking, is it seems to be sort of deep down in the human condition, though, somewhere. You go to a museum and you look at things that have somehow survived from the ancient world. They've quite often had their noses knocked off, their arms knocked off, just a portion of the head smashed away. So from ancient times. Or even all the Muay on Easter Island pushed over. Without even starting on the French Revolution, and all the stained glass that was broken there. It seems like people want to, periodically destroy their own past, or not all, a faction of people will do that. It's hard to avoid almost.
But it's impossible to avoid because what it represents is the ushering of a new era and a new set of values that contradict and denigrate the prior values before. And so what came before is rendered as evil. And so it's a total inversion of values. Like what was good to those people is now evil to you. And so you have to destroy it to make your mark effectively.
But the amount that you do that is an indication of how insane your movement has become.
How insecure you are.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
some people
That's
brought
it.
up,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I remembered,
absolutely that.
which is it wasn't just Robert E. Lee statues that have to come down. His horse's grave. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah, I do remember this. That is mental.
The horse had to die, apparently. This is where the horse is buried. There's a little plaque next to it and a little plaque on the floor to remember a traveler, the horse. And they went and destroyed that. I mean, I'm sorry, but the American movement to destroy everything about America is evil beyond belief. When you're blowing up a horse's grave. I mean, again, you look at ISIS and they're like, oh, carry on. Calm down, boys. Moving on.
Well, you understand it was a slave-owning horse.
I just wanted to mention as well, just to put it in context, there was a quote from Trump a while back where he was like, if only we had Robert E. Lee today to command our troops in Afghanistan, which, I mean, this is the real divide. That's a direct quote. You can read it at the end there.
Robert Lee was a fine general, so...
He'd be better than the ones they have now, and that's something you can deal with. But just to end this off, as a statement I've made before, and I really want to hit it across for anyone who doesn't quite understand why I look at this the way I do. Here we have images of the Confederate battle flag being used throughout all of American wars since the Civil War. And that's something that always has confused me as to why all of a sudden they've decided to try to destroy it. Because you could see here, Americans with Confederate battle flags are liberating Europe. But you think this all represents slavery? How exactly? Like, it just doesn't. And it goes on and on. This is, I believe, also World War II. And then this is another conflict. I can't date this one. And then it goes all the way to, as you can see, the Mississippi flag there, I think, with the Confederate battle flag being part of the state flag. And in both of these examples as well, I do find it quite funny that there's a black chap in both of them.
Yeah.
Doesn't care. It's not what it's about.
No.
Are they going to try and delete 1969 Dodge Chargers in orange with welded shut doors? Because they're pretty cool. I'd hate to see those get
Don't see many of them around, do you?
But hell, that may be coming. But either way, this is, I think, not an insignificant event. But if not for any other reason than the imagery has given us for how insane, well, the direction of travel America is on the Confederacy and how incorrect it is.
Sorry, one of the things I think, is that the vast majority of Americans, I hope, are as aghast at this sort of thing as we are. The way most people in Britain seem to be aghast by sort of Corbynistas or having Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. Most people are like, I didn't want that.
Yeah.
That doesn't represent me. I hope most Americans will look at the melting down of Bobby Lee and be sickened.
Well, I think that's why they did it in secret.
Right, okay, right.
Know
it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, but I think, I'm sure
they know they're guilty.
Yeah.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Symposium series, this episode on seduction. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.